it was tough because, like I said, I love wrestling. This is like I love Nico. That's my friend. Like that's my brother, and it's his dream to be in WWE more than it was my dream.
Our guest today is someone who I know is about to take the wrestling industry by storm, more so than he already has. You'd know him best from his recent time spent in WWE as one half of the beloved Heavy Machinery. Please welcome Tucker, or as he's going by now, Levi Cooper, to the show. How are you doing?
What's up, man? How's it going?
It's going good. Going good. It looks nice where you are right now.
Oh, yes. Pacific Northwest. Very beautiful. 75 out today.
That's good. That's better weather than we're having over here in New York right now. A little too humid, but aside from the weather, I saw you doing yoga the other morning, right? On your Instagram. Is that something you do every morning?
Pretty much, yeah. Me and the wife. Yep. That.
Staying
Yeah,
in
yep.
shape.
Monday through Friday. Yep. We try to get up at 5:45 or so and get that in from, I got a 3-year-old. So if you don't get up early and get it in the morning, probably ain't going to happen. So
Exactly. Yeah. Well, that's awesome to see. You're on the DDP yoga at all too? You ever try that out?
totally. Yep. Yeah. I've been on that pretty heavily. 2 of them. Yeah. I mean, I made a big pivot in my training about a year ago now, when I realized that basically my core was deficient in some areas and that I wasn't able to support my body in the way that it was designed biometrically to be supported.
Right.
My mobility was bad, and even though I could squat 500 pounds, I wasn't doing that correctly, with correct technique. And
Yeah.
I didn't care about the long-term ramifications of that really. For maybe 15 years, I was just kind of in the quest of getting bigger, faster, and stronger at whatever the cost. And so as I kind of reevaluated, what I want my 30s to look like, and how I want to feel and what I want to be able to do, it became apparent to me that I needed to make a pivot in my training, and I couldn't just be lifting weights, in the quest of getting strictly stronger. I got this book that's about mobility that I use kind of to train with.
Nice.
It's all about kind of functional mobility chains, excuse me. And so that's sort of been what the emphasis of my training has been, and yoga's been a big part of that.
That's really cool to hear, actually. Yeah, I've heard it's beneficial to so many people in different ways, but nice to see that. So would you say you're healthier now than when you left WWE, or when you were on the road, I should say?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, that's well, particularly when the first year we were up and we were traveling every week, I mean, that's a grind in multiple ways. Obviously you're wrestling 3-4 matches a week. So that takes its toll in a certain way. And then, a few hundred miles each time in between towns, and, a few 4-hour plane rides in there a week. And
Yeah.
all of a sudden, it adds up quick,
Right. Absolutely. Well, I always like to take it back to the beginning on this show, and I want to start your journey getting into pro wrestling because I saw you were a successful amateur wrestler, right? In school.
Yep. I was. So that's essentially how I got into professional wrestling. Jerry Briscoe, shout out, Big Gerald, he's the man.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wrestled at 3 different schools actually. First 2 schools I went to, Portland State and Cal State Bakersfield. They both dropped their wrestling programs in the first year that I was with them. So this is 2008, Portland State, 2009 in Bakersfield. Bakersfield ended up bringing their program back. But after they had dropped it, I took the chance to, basically have a free release and not have to worry about having to sit out a year due to NCAA rules and whatever. It doesn't really matter. But I drove down to Arizona and ended up walking on there at Arizona State, and spent 3 years down there, and it was amazing. Became an All-American, and, was the top 10 heavyweight in the country for 3 years in a row, pretty much. And, won multiple matches at the NCAA national tournament every single year.
Wow. Yeah.
Have a 7-6 lifetime record at the NCAA national tournament in 3 trips. And I think that with sort of the way I carried myself on the mat, obviously struck Mr. Briscoe because in December, maybe January of my senior year, Las Vegas Invitational, he was there, and we had a conversation. He gave me his information, and I gave him mine, and just kind of said, "Hey, when you're done with school, let me know, and we'll bring you out to Florida and have a tryout, and see if there's potentially a future here." So I graduated from school in June of 2013, or May, actually, the very end of May. And then in June is when I had my tryout. It was actually in Tampa, the last one at FCW before they moved to the PC in
that's
Orlando.
Really cool. Wow. Yeah.
Yep. So Chad Gable was at that tryout. Sonny Dinza, who is Akam from Authors of Pain, was at that tryout. Donovan Dijakovic was at that tryout. It was his first tryout. That was funny. So anyways, had that, and then they actually called me on my 23rd birthday, July 24th, to let me know they were going to hire me. And I started at the very beginning of January 2014 with NXT. So that was kind of the beginning of my journey.
That is an amazing journey, really, right out of school. I know there's a few in the history that get signed like right out of school, but you're probably part of an elite list, I'd say, right?
Yeah, I mean, Angelo Dawkins, Gary Jackson, he came from junior college straight to WWE. And he was a two-sport athlete in junior college. I mean, Otis really kind of did the same thing. He wrestled in school for a little bit, and then he was doing his thing at the in Colorado Springs at the Olympic Training Center, and wrestling on the Indies a little bit before he ultimately came. So it wasn't necessarily straight out of school, I guess, but I think he was actually a little younger than I was when he started. But yeah, it was not a path that a lot of people there kind of had taken to get into that building, right? Very different from most people that were in the building, for sure.
Did you ever wish, because I find it interesting with people who just went straight there, did you ever wish you had that like indie lifestyle and experience when you first walked in there, or did it not really strike you?
I mean, in a way, yeah, because obviously there's certain relationships are important, and so to have kind of guys that have seen each other before they got to WWE and have some level of relationship before then, that leads to a certain level of bond or whatever, however you want to describe that. So there's definitely a bit of that, but I since I was before middle school, I wanted to be a Division I college athlete. That was my dream, was to be a Division I college athlete. And at first I wanted to play football, and I ultimately ended up wrestling. And so WWE was sort of like the opportunity that was best, that was there on the table kind of for me. It wasn't something that like something I was super grateful for, and was like, oh man, what an opportunity. Like I can't pass this up,
Mm-hmm.
Interestingly, I was pretty ready to just become an accountant. Honestly, I have an accounting degree. Like I said, I graduated, and I had my trial after I graduated. So, I was talking to a couple of places and was going to potentially just, become an entry level accountant and try to work my way up that way. So
I love that contrast of wrestler on one table and accountant on the other.
Yeah, man, it's pretty wild.
It is. It's cool what you chose, though. It really is. And definitely a big opportunity. What was it like, that experience, like walking through the doors of NXT after you went through the tryout and training at the PC, or training at the PC tryout at FCW? But what was that like, NXT, the first experience?
Well, it was wild, man. It was different. I remember, I did some research, so I had some idea of what I was getting myself into. I remember initially one of the big surprises that I hadn't considered was the jargon of professional wrestling, right? and how I wasn't intimately familiar with that, because I just been, spending the last basically 7-8 years as an amateur wrestler, and very focused on doing that, and not really maybe watching here and there. I remember I went to Money in the Bank when it came to Phoenix, when Dolph Ziggler won.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So I went to that, while I was in school. But I wasn't, following super closely. I mean, I was a broke college kid. I didn't even have TV. So like,
I know the feeling. Yeah.
yeah. So, there was some culture shock, like I said, that piece of it, just kind of like, oh my God, like I have to ask questions. These guys are throwing these terms around. Like it's clearly obvious that, it's a big part of what's happening here. And I have no idea what they're talking about. I got to figure that out. And then, I was primarily an athlete and like kind of a math and science guy as far as school went. I wasn't, I didn't do drama. I wasn't really that, just wasn't something that I spent my time doing.
Right.
And so kind of learning all about that piece of it as I went through my journey has been very enlightening and has made me have to do, a lot of reflecting on myself. At least that's kind of the thing that we learned there is kind of some method acting techniques. And, so that wasn't like an immediate thing, but that was something that I don't think I would ever consider doing or learning about, that like super glad that I got the opportunity to learn about, because, it makes me see things in such a different light, having some of that kind of formal training, and also just the opportunity to be around some pretty remarkable, talented individuals.
Absolutely. Yeah, you were rubbing shoulders with some of the best in the world, right, in the business. And I want to ask, because I'm curious, do you if you have any specific moments when you didn't know that jargon, because it sounds like a funny situation. Were there any moments, or do you remember when you learned something specific?
Yeah, there was one. I actually said this on an interview earlier, but it was like, I think it was my first week, and I was in what they call a skull session, which is like just a video, you're watching matches.
Okay.
On the screen. It's just, we're around a conference table. There's a TV in the front of it. Everyone's watching the match. It might be like a historical match. It might be a match from a live event. We're all going to watch it and kind of, just talk about it, jam ideas about it essentially, or whatever.
Yeah.
So like I said, it's my first week, and everyone's talking about the heat. They're like, heat, and I'm just sitting there. I'm like, damn, dude, it's clearly obvious that like, there's, and they're using it, they're talking about it in the context of a match, about, when
Right.
heel is up on the baby face. Right. So, yeah, man, I mean, they must have said it like 10 times, 15 times, right? Everyone's just talking about it. It's like, I got it. Like,
Yeah.
Hey, this is probably a stupid question, guys, but like, y'all keep saying heat. Like, I please explain to me what you mean when you say that word, because I don't know what you're talking about.
The student in you there. Yeah.
Yeah. And, so obviously there were some chuckles and whatever, like, but there was also some, some good, whatever explanation, I guess you'd say, right? About like, okay, well, during the match, the heat is this part, but it also happens to be these instances when the context is different, right? Like if you have heat backstage or whatever, right? That's like same word, but a different context. And so you kind of have to understand what someone's talking about to know specifically what they mean when they say that and other, terms. So, and I mean, I asked a lot of questions about those. I mean, I have a journal that has like a bunch of words written down in it.
Really
like,
cool. From a fan's perspective, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was like I said, I mean, it was something I never considered, and it was just like,
Yeah.
it was like a big hurdle at the very beginning of my sort of journey of like, well, I can't even learn if I don't know what these people are talking about when they are saying these things.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely. And I feel like that's in a lot of professions, but wrestling more so than most. I'd love to know now. So you're in NXT. How early on was Heavy Machinery actually like pitched to you? When did that come into the picture?
Well, I mean, Otis didn't start until after I'd been there for 2 years. So,
Right.
And then I think he'd been there for maybe 3 or 4 months before. It was actually Matt Bloom, head coach, that kind of pitched the idea. We were kind of talking, and he was just like, hey, I have this idea. I'm going to book you guys on a live event. And we were actually heels the first time we wrestled. It's a pretty funny story. And it was in Ocala, Florida, which is, you know, like sort of north central Florida. And it was like late July, early August. And the venue in Ocala is a outdoor hotel pavilion. It's like one of the big tents, you know, like canvas tents, but it's outside. It's like exposed to the elements. So I mean, it's legitimately, I don't know, 94, 95, like 70% humidity. It's a hot Florida summer day. I just remember hugging Otis and having like one of the sweatiest hugs of this is before the match started. Just like, oh my God, dude, we're gonna die out here. Like we're gonna have to chug so much water out of this. Yeah, it was fun. And then, like I says, we were heels that one time, and then we just tried out as baby faces, I think, the next weekend or whatever. And it was sort of like, oh, okay, we're just gonna keep booking you guys as baby faces. And you know, we kind of had a good foundational level of understanding. We both grew up in kind of small town blue collar America. You know, I grew up in Hubbard, Oregon. It's like 2,000 people, 2,500 people. He grew up in Superior, Wisconsin, way up north, and its own kind of isolated, very blue collar area. And then on top of that, we were both high level amateur heavyweights, you know, and so, you know, there's a bond between amateur wrestlers, but then there's an even deeper bond between heavyweights because we're just kind of different than the other wrestlers. You know what I mean? Like we can eat food all the time. It's just like, we just got our own thing going on or whatever. We're like, you know, Chad Gable, actually, he likes to say all heavyweights are the same. He always just shakes his head. All you heavyweights, you guys are all the same. So that kind of foundation, I think, was like, there was a vibe there, just an understanding that we had that like made it kind of work right away, you know?
Right. Of course. And you actually jumped to one of my questions. You mentioned it. I was curious, and this may jump around depending on when it was. What is the most, if you had to pick a moment, food that you and Otis have consumed? Because Steaks and Weights was such a big part of your guys' character. Was that like, is there a moment when you can remember you guys just pigged out?
Oh, I mean, several moments, you know. It's like you know, I don't know if you're following us on at the time, we went live on Instagram several times barbecuing. And
I remember
you know, we did a video with the big tomahawk steaks. And I mean, you know, we are still very good friends. I mean, obviously we don't get to see each other very often, but at the time, you know, we're like legitimately brothers, right? I mean, we have a big time love for one another, and we genuinely enjoy each other's company, not just, you know, at work, but outside of work. And
so cool.
So we were getting together and smashing food on a regular basis. There's a place in Orlando, this Puerto Rican spot that we used to hit all the time that had like his big lunch counter, you know, it'd have like 10 different rices and like 20 different meats. So it's called Lechonera Orlando. And oh God, we just go there and get like two things each. And she's like, oh man, it was just so giant. It was, you want to eat some more? Yeah, I don't know if I can. I'm going to do it anyways.
I can't imagine the average person, I guess, going out to eat with you and Otis. Like, it just seemed like you guys took that and ran with it, the whole Steaks and Weights in and outside. This is it. This is where it's at.
This is my Twitch background now.
Yeah, I saw you're very big on Twitch now, right? What kind of games do you play on Twitch?
I mean, recently I've just been playing Fortnite mostly. I'll play some FIFA on there. Mario Golf on the Switch just came out. Big fan of that. Love golf in general.
That's awesome.
So when Battlefield comes out, I'll play a bunch of that too.
Right. That's anticipated. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I'll get back into it if that's cool. With the, I'll jump back into the question I had, which was just like developing your characters for Heavy Machinery. Like, did you see them evolve while you guys were in NXT from when you first started? Obviously, as heels, it was different.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we started to kind of, I would say, refine the characters, right? Or just figure out what about our dynamic worked, you know, as I started to try to kind of move into that, you know, or not kind of try to move, but like understand more of, okay, this guy's a maniac. Like, he just needs to be able to be a maniac. And like, I need to be the consistent one, and try to like kind of figure out how to do that the best I can, you know, inside of this, and just allow him to be like, you can't script him at all. You know what I mean? You could script me, but you can't script him. We try to script him, it's not going to be as good. So just, you know, that, like, I mean, and then I guess just, at least for me, you know, I was talking about method acting earlier, and just so
Right.
I do have a little brother in real life. So just kind of thinking on, real life on situations that I think back to that I could kind of, use in the team, right? As whatever, my transferences, if you will. And just kind of, growing into, those and I mean, like my character that I was trying to portray was basically like best big brother ever. Like that's who I was trying to be basically as Tucker in Heavy Machinery's like, just that's it basically, like big time, protector and of Otis, basically, best big brother, best friend, like and so and for him, I mean, obviously he's just a very special and unique person. So and I recognize kind of like his charisma is second to none, and he obviously has more of that than me, and so that's like the thing we would highlight for him, whereas like I'm much more articulate than he is. And so when it comes time for someone to be articulate and need to like get some things out really fast and talk in a hurry and be able to like explain it so people can understand what someone's saying, that's me. I'm that guy. So, kind of as we cut in promos and figuring out, okay, where's our roles and how do we best make that sort of work? And then, I mean, in the ring, it's the same kind of thing, right? What kind of story are we trying to tell here? Like, what's our, and on the main roster, it became me taking the heat and him running the comeback basically every time, because that's what was desired by, the people in charge. But in NXT, we kind of flip-flopped a lot, and that was awesome because we got to explore a lot of different things and tell some different stories than we were kind of able to in our main roster time.
Yeah. And you hear a lot of like in NXT about Triple H having his hands in a lot of things. Did he help with creative at all with Heavy Machinery when you guys were in NXT?
Yeah, he did a little bit. He has his hands in everything, obviously. I would say, it was primarily the two of us. We because we were together for probably 9 months before we were actually on television. So, and in those 9 months, it was really just like us trying to figure it out, trying to make it work, trying to get over with the crowd and the loop in Florida and figuring out what's working for us there. And when we get the opportunity to go on the road and do it in a few different spots, then kind of get it ironed. But I mean, even our television debut was not Heavy Machinery, right? It was just Otis and Tucker, and we were putting over Roderick Strong on his debut. So, we didn't really ever get kind of that, we had some television time, and obviously we were successful in some regards, but I think, he wasn't as hands-on with us as he was with some other people, I would say.
Well, then, so transitioning from NXT to main roster, we hear a lot now about like the dreaded NXT call-ups. Curious for somebody who actually experienced it, what your thoughts on that is overall, how you guys felt.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's multiple layers to it, right? So I think the first layer you have to understand as a performer is that because if you're like, basically whatever has happened on NXT and what you've done, especially, it might be a little different now, but a couple years ago, I think maybe you could only count, it depends on the market, of course, but I think you could only count on at maximum a quarter of a Raw or SmackDown audience to like know who you are when you're debuting based on your work in NXT. So I think as a performer, you have to understand, okay, like I'm sort of restarting here, and how are we going to get over, basically, for lack of a better, and like, what's that look like? It's like, okay, we can't just start from the same point we were at when we finished in NXT and just like think that kind of story is going to continue and everyone's going to understand it. There's not going to be any, lost in translation there. There definitely will be. So,
right.
I think that's one piece of it, Then I think there's a big disconnect between if you're, especially when they're traveling, you're like, there's no way you can watch NXT if you're working up there, you know, and I mean, I'm sure people watch and they try their best, but I'm saying from someone who traveled and did it all, like, you know, if you're a writer and you're working on Raw and SmackDown, like, you don't have time to be consuming other things. You're just like totally sucked into your world that never stops, and you're just like in the kind of, you know, you're in it, and that's the way that it is. So whatever the boss wants, the boss gets, right? I mean, that's just the way that it works up there. It's not like some big secret, right? So I mean, just understanding how those kind of forces work, right? That's muddy water to navigate for anyone. And then on top of that, like, you may be handed a script and said, like, you have to say every single word on this script, you know, like, you can't deviate from this. You're not able to. And so you have to figure out how to do that too, right? And on top of that, it's live TV, and it happens like you might get a script and then it changes an hour later, and then it changes again because of the way that things work up there. So, you know, it's all of those things. Is like, it's just a very stressful, you know, very tricky environment. And, you know, I mean, it's tough, man.
It's so many different variables, it seems. I love that. Was a great answer too. You really put it into perspective. Hard for everyone to keep track of everything, right? If you're on main roster, traveling, etc.
Yeah, I mean, and yeah, just like, well, yeah, and so you're like, you're new and you're coming into, and you have to figure out, like, you know, who does what, and you know, and who's, like, you know, who's in charge of which areas, and if you have a question, who can you go to that can, like, actually give you an answer that is, you know, an answer that will be right, or you know, all of these types. That's another, you know, kind of added layers. Just like, well, if you have a good relationship with, you know, like, with someone especially Vince, then that obviously makes all that stuff much easier. But when you first go up, you're just like kind of trying to figure out where you latch onto and how to sort of just get any kind of answer, get any kind of direction, get any kind of, like, what people are really directly expecting, because it's just crazy and it's moving so fast.
Do you remember your first experience with Vince? Was there any type of, like, preconceived, just like trepidation with him, or not as much? Maybe, you know, you didn't have that, like, whole wrestling background.
You know, I mean, he certainly has an intimidating presence. There's no doubt about that. You know, obviously he's, you know, he is who he is, and he carries himself as such. And he's a super busy man, right? He's the head honcho. So when you do get the chance to talk to him, it's like, you know, you can't be wasting his time, right? You gotta be making sure that it's for the right reasons, and you know, with the right things behind it, or whatever the case may be. So yeah, I mean, I remember our first conversation, you know, me and Otis, we were probably, or Otis and I should say, we were in there for, I don't know, maybe 7, 8, 10 minutes, something like that. And just sort of general, you know, welcome. We, you know, we want your ideas, you know, make connections, make contact with people, and, you know, just sort of, you know, you're here for a reason. So just, you know, do what you guys need to do, and, you know, best of luck, kind of thing. It was definitely, I mean, I never had any really negative experiences with Vince. All the experiences I had with him, you know, were fairly positive experiences. You know, I mean, I didn't interact with him all that often. You know, I probably interacted with him, I don't know, maybe 12 to 15 times in my 2 years or so. So, you know, it was, like I said, I mean, everybody's trying to get at him, especially on a TV day. So when you do get the opportunity, you gotta have your ducks in a row, and and you know, he's reasonable, and you know, he's not like the most difficult guy to talk to, but by the same token, it's like, if you're not holding his attention, you'll know it.
Yeah. When you and Otis got to the main roster, did you or you and Otis together have any specific goals that you wanted to accomplish while there?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we wanted to have a tag championship run, you know what I mean? we wanted to wrestle on WrestleMania together. Before that, obviously, we wanted to have pay-per-view matches. We didn't have any takeover matches together as a team. So, we felt like we had that first one, and it was actually not too far. I mean, 2.5 hours from where I grew up in Tacoma. Well, I didn't grow up in Tacoma, but Tacoma is where it was. And we wrestled Daniel Bryan and Rowan. And it was really interesting because we were heels from the audience that night. And that was, big time, because, we're not far from Daniel Bryan's home in Tacoma. And he got a huge pop. He was massively over. And we were getting booed. And it's like, and, the ref basically tells us right when we're walking down, hey, doesn't matter that you guys are getting booed. They're telling me through the ear set right now, you guys are just doing the match the way you guys are the baby faces. They're the heels. This is a pay-per-view match. We're telling a story, do the match. So it's okay, cool, whatever. And so that was an interesting kind of barrier or just, thing that happened. Was whoa, it's there was, we talked about it in the back, hey, it could be like that, but then experiencing of oh my God, dude, this is a deafening boos that are hitting us right now.
We you gotta just eat
ever,
it, right?
And it's not as a heel, if you're hearing those boos, you're salivating, right? You're just, as a baby face in your first pay-per-view match, you come out just drowning boos. Man, all right, buddy, let's see if we can turn them around.
And I honestly don't remember that match. If you turned them around, did you turn them around?
Not fully. Otis was definitely getting cheered by the time you ran the comeback. We had a pretty long heat, so we definitely brought him down. And Daniel Bryan's obviously an incredible performer, so he knows how to not acknowledge them. But at the same time, we weren't fully able to turn them. No, but we did. We weren't getting booed out of the building. We got babyface cheers after we lost at the end. They won, they left, then did the deal. I just laid down in the middle of the ring for as long as it took until those guys were basically gone. And then, kind of stand up and give the hey, thank you guys for the deal. And,
thank you.
We got some cheers and claps there. So that was cool. I was pleased with that match. I thought it was a good match. And
right.
It was overall an awesome experience, but it was just kind of a crazy, one-time situation.
It's really funny that they wouldn't just let it organically happen. I understand you were telling the story, but I couldn't imagine being in that situation where you're getting that and you kind of have to. That's a real challenge right there. And your first pay-per-view match. I wanted to know, so yeah, you had some great moments. That was one of them, and then you fought for the tag titles numerous times. But I'm curious, were there ever plans to put the titles on you that you were aware of, that you heard of, and that it just fell through?
No, not that I ever heard of. I know there was maybe some speculation around the Money in the Bank when Otis first won it, but for about a month after he won that, I wasn't even going to TV. Obviously we're in the middle of the pandemic, so I'm not the only person that wasn't traveling at that time. There's plenty of talent that weren't traveling at that time. It's very limited crew, it's as limited as possible. But yeah, I didn't hear anything around that. And as far as I know, other than the Yolo County Tag Championships, I don't think there was any tag titles in the works for Heavy Machinery. Unfortunately,
there definitely should have been, because the chemistry was there. And as you've talked about, I love hearing the thought that actually went into your individual roles. A storyline, obviously, that had that on display heading into Mania was the Mandy Rose, Otis, you, and Dolph Ziggler, that huge storyline. And just to start at the beginning of that, it was huge. I'd say one of the better storylines in that Mania, if not the best. It got so much attention. When you and Otis were pitched that, did you know it was going to be that big? Did anyone have that thought?
Well, no, of course not. But at the same time, Otis has been he's been kind of doing this Mandy on social media ruse for years now, right? Essentially, really, yeah. More than 2 years. Since we were in NXT, he has been, posting goes his future girlfriend, and just kind of like, so there was already this kind of organic social media thing that existed for that story before it ever made its way onto television. You know, around the Valentine's Day stuff, like we had a pretty good idea that, hey, this could be some real gold here. You know, a very entertaining character. You have, you know, Mandy, who's, you know, great at what she does and is obviously, you know, very attractive, beautiful girl. And so sort of the, you know, beauty and the beast dichotomy there, right, is already lends itself to being interesting and kind of just striking on the eye. But then, you know, kind of how genuine Otis is and comes across, because he really is, you know, that kind of human being in real life. You know, and I think, you know, Mandy's personality also being the way that it is, that, you know, they both had a comfortability with each other that made that storyline work in a way that I don't know if a lot of other, you know, I shouldn't say a lot of, so many talented people there, but, you know, I think they really had a high level of respect for each other. And so, you know, their ability to kind of work together, navigating what may be, you know, awkward situations for some people. I mean, I know, like I said, I have a wife, and if I was on the reverse side of that storyline, I would definitely be feeling uncomfortable with some of the things that were happening.
Right.
You know, and that's just me personally. That's different for them. And so that's kind of my point is, you know, I think because of the way their personalities are, that worked really well, better than maybe that same story would have worked with other people.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you. The chemistry was there. They've tried romance angles for as long as I've been a fan in WWE, and a lot of them fall through, you know, and I think it is that chemistry that gets the job done there. And you're right. It was always, I remember when I first found out about you and Otis, it was like, you know, early on, and then I started seeing him posting this, and my friends and I were just sending it to each other, like, look at this, is so funny. Like, are they actually together? Like, what is this? One mannerism when you're talking about your two roles there. I think it was after Mandy said yes to the date. I was just watching it the other night in preparation, but I think it was, yeah, when she was like, I don't have plans next Friday, and you were standing there, you were like, my man, something like, you did something like that, and I was like, that's amazing. Like, that's just so funny. Like, you guys, you complimented each other so well, you know, in that instance. You remember working on that storyline leading up to Mania?
Yeah, totally. I mean, we were in all the scenes kind of just, you know, discussing, okay, you know, it's just like, how are we gonna, like, or basically the way with I guess I'll just go, like, our creative process essentially would be like, we'll get the script, and you know, I'll read over the script, and I'll start kind of reading through it to both of us, you know, and then he maybe have some scripted points in there, and I'll just be like, okay, these are your kind of spots. And then as I'm reading through it, he'll just start to like be sort of my, like, you know, backup DJ, if you will, if I was a rapper essentially, right? And just start like being himself in the back. And maybe if there's a point where I'm feeling like, hey, like, I would like to take a pause here. Is there something that you might want to fit in here as I'm reading through it? Like, okay, like, and then I'll read through it again, and he'll think about what he might want to say there, you know, and we just kind of go through it like that, you know, until we feel like we have, you know, a couple of moments that are sort of like the story that we're trying to tell, essentially, right? Okay, these are the main beats that we're trying to get across here. And it's a real brotherhood, man. It really is. Like, it's, you know, I still talk to this man every week, you know, no doubt. Like,
I love that.
And I mean, and there's no, like, I shouldn't say no doubt, because, you know, life is what it is, unpredictable, and you can't, you know, ever make solid plans on really anything. But, you know, I would venture to guess that the two of us will be back together in the wrestling ring at some point in time. I'd be pretty surprised if that didn't happen eventually.
We need to see that, because the ending wasn't what anybody wanted. I think that's safe to say. So after Otis did win Money in the Bank, what was the feeling like with you guys when you found out that you had to actually turn on him?
Well, I mean, it just happened in such a weird way. It was like, you know, we didn't really know what was going to happen. We couldn't get any solid answers on it. So it was like, we did the Talking Smack segment, right, where they announced that I'm going to go to Raw. So that was like the first time we kind of figured out that, all right, well, maybe they're splitting us up. But then for like the next 2 weeks, we're both doing stuff on each other's brands, right? We do like,
right,
we do the El Gran Gordo thing and
Yeah.
you know, whatever. Because we're still doing the trial hasn't happened yet, right? At the time that we split, the trial still hasn't happened. So it's like, all right, well, it hasn't finished, I think. Or I don't know. We're still leading to the match. I can't remember exactly the timeline, but you know, the day that I actually did that pay-per-view was a Hell in a Cell, right? Like I wasn't even booked for that pay-per-view, right? I was there Friday because we did the El Gran Gordo thing. And then I stayed through the weekend because I was booked for Monday. And we have the TR app, like an app, you know, in-house app that has a calendar. And each day if you have an event, it has a dot on the calendar. And I didn't have a dot for that pay-per-view. So I'm in Florida. I'm going golfing. Like I'm driving to the golf course. It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon and I get a text from travel, like, hey, they need you at the arena. I'm like, it's 1 o'clock. What are you talking about? Call time's 2. Like, I'm on my way to the golf course. What do you mean they need me at the arena? But like, well, they need you at the arena. I'm like, all right, well, I don't have any of my stuff or whatever. Like, I'm probably not going to make call time. Like, all right, well, just get there when you can, you know? So I got there at like 3 and probably didn't find out what was happening until like 4:30 or 5. And I think the pay-per-view went live at 7. So didn't have time to discuss it really, right? It was just like, I had a promo that they gave me afterwards too. So it was just,
Yeah, I remember that.
man, it was, looking back on it, I suspect that it was like in part designed for me to just like do it without asking the questions that I probably should have asked. I mean, that's really my one regret with WWE. Like, I wouldn't really change anything else except I wish I just wouldn't have turned on it. I wish I wouldn't have done that because it was stupid. It made no sense. We didn't do anything afterwards. I didn't do anything really afterwards. There was no plan after going forward from it. Like, it made no sense except they just wanted to take the briefcase off of him. So it was just like total collateral damage situation. And you know, I wish I would have told them no, but I didn't. And you know, it is what it is. But I mean, in all truthfulness, like things hadn't been that positive, you know, at least for me, from like the time Otis really won the Money in the Bank briefcase. It was pretty obvious that like they really liked him, and they, you know, they weren't really letting me know how they felt about me, but obviously they, you know, weren't that high on me because of the way that things went down. So you know, it was tough because, like I said, I love Otis. I mean, this is like, I love Nico. That's my friend. Like, that's my brother. And it's his dream to be in WWE more than it was my dream. Right. And so, like, I can't ruin that for him. Right. It's like, yeah, I want Heavy Machinery to stay together, but I also don't want to deprive somebody who I genuinely love of like the opportunity to be as successful as they can be, right? Like I don't have to live with taking that away from my friend. I can't be that person, you know. It's not like, that's just not who I am. So you know, that was also a piece of it for me, was just like, well, I'll just take my medicine here, you know, because and what happens happens. And if I can make something work for myself, then I'll make it work. And if I can't, then, you know, I have other avenues, right? Like, as much as I don't really want to do it, like I could go explain numbers to people and make good money doing it, because I'm not, you know, because I can't, like, because I have that talent, that ability. So you know, having that kind of in the back of my mind, I guess, freed me up to at least understand that, you know, it was more important to me to, you know, make sure that I didn't hurt or potentially hurt someone's career by pushing too hard, than, you know, to, like I said, really, really kind of steer into that and try to make more happen. You know, it was complex. It was difficult. And, you know, like I said before, kind of, I wasn't always in the best place mentally. And you know, these last 4 months that I've gotten to spend with my family and just kind of take care of my body and my mind have been super important. And I'm feeling, you know, as good as I have in a while. So you know, things happen the way they happen. And, you know, I'm a journey guy. I have a growth mindset. I think success and failure is just the way you measure your process, not the way that you should be feeling good or bad about yourself. You should have your ego attached to your process, not have your ego attached to, successes and failures. Like I said, those should be the way that you kind of test how you go about living your life on a daily basis. At least that's my approach.
I love that. I really do. And I love the selflessness, really, and just your total outlook on the whole Otis splitting up situation. And speaking of what you just said, a big mantra I see that represents you really of what you just said. It's on your Twitter is you make lemonade, right? Make lemonade when you're given lemons. So I'm curious what the lemonade you've been making is like since you've left WWE. I know you're taking care of your body and your mind and your soul, but I also know that your no compete clause just ended recently.
Yeah, so I got a few indie bookings, coming up. My first thing I'll be in New York City at the end of the month doing some signings.
Oh, really? Where is it? Wrestling Universe, by any chance?
I believe so. Yeah, I think on Saturday. So I'm doing two. I do a virtual in New York. I'm doing an in-person on Saturday, and then I'm doing Albany, New York on Sunday, which is the first, I believe, of the 1st of August. So, yep. So that'll be the first thing I'm doing. I've kind of left basically the back half of September, kind of all the way through the end of the year. I haven't taken very many bookings. My wife is due at the very end of September.
Congratulations.
And thank you. And she's actually up for like a fairly big promotion. She's an educator. Nice. And so, she's supported me a lot in my wrestling ventures. And so I'm going to, take a little more time just to focus on myself and my family until the end of the year, pretty much. Not, like I said, not doing too much wrestling, just kind of figuring out who I want to be as I come back as a wrestler, and just kind of getting all those, I have a pretty good idea of who I want to be, at least initially, as I come back. But that's something that is really, really important to me, more important than it's ever been to me in my life. My family and, my identity as a father and a husband matters greatly to me, and to, like I said, kind of give my wife that support that she's going to need as she moves into a new role at her work, and becomes the primary breadwinner for our family. So, yeah. Which I'm happy for her to be. I'm excited for her to have that as an opportunity. And I know she's excited about that. And I'm happy for her too. Very happy.
Got such a positive mindset. I love it. It's like infectious. It really is. It's really cool to see that you're doing well and that you're excited for the future. I got one more question for you. I recently saw that you were praising some AEW stars. I think it was Britt Baker and Chris Jericho on another interview that you just did. And I was just wondering if that could be in your future as well. If you're looking at AEW or anyone in the industry really, but anyone over there that you'd like to step in the ring with.
Yeah, potentially, I really want to check out the indie scene for a little while. I need to figure out exactly who I am, who Levi Cooper is inside of the wrestling ring with no foil as Otis, right? And I don't want to jump right back onto television without really having a solid idea as to who that is, and kind of, the foundational piece I know is going to be very heavily centered around amateur wrestling, right? That's right. Not just kind of what should I say, physically, but also mentally, right? That's a big part of who I am, and the reason why I am where I am in my life is that. And so to kind of get back to that and remember, the lessons that I learned as an amateur athlete, and really center that as the foundation for my wrestling character, is what I'm looking to do. And then sort of the next layer on top of that, I've said this in a couple other interviews, is kind of like a force of nature, right? Essentially, right? Somebody who understands the kind of extreme dichotomy that exists between the super calm and peaceful nature exhibits a majority of the time, but when necessary, the sheer force and violence that it's capable of, exhibiting is kind of what I'm going to be looking to be the center, right? Kind of the ethos of the, main part of the tree, if you will, right? So got the dirt, the foundation is amateur wrestling, then kind of the base of the tree will be, sort of that next piece. And where I branch off from that, I haven't exactly decided, and I need to do some experimenting, and very much looking forward to, doing that all over the country, and hopefully in Europe and Japan in 2022 also. I want to experience the indies, like I said, experience a lot of different places, experience a lot of different crowds, and try to use that to grow as a performer, personally, because I feel like I need that, not that I have some stuff to prove to myself, not to prove to anyone else, but just, okay, like, these are the things you've learned, but now you have to really figure out how to apply them to yourself, and you have, and without anyone else's, everybody needs help, but for yourself, right? Like, I'm not saying not without help, because of course I'm going to need some help. I'm going to need, opinions of people who I trust, and,
right.
Watchful eyes, and people who are looking at the big picture, but, not to do it for any reason other than because it will make me happy, and because it's what I want to try to pursue, as an artist, for lack of a better term, right? Because I want to figure out what it is about authentically me that connects with other people, because I don't just want to use it as a wrestler. It's like you talk about how I have some infectiousness, right? My grandfather, who just passed away last year, was on the radio forever, and he's a giant inspiration to me. He was the voice of the Portland Winterhawks, and so to be able to think about the things that I've learned and the lessons that I've learned to get to where I am, and then try to figure out how to make them make sense in some linear fashion, and be able to explain it to other people so that they can maybe use that same stuff in order to take care of themselves, is important to me. It's something that I want to do going forward. Maybe not immediately, but it's definitely something that I'm hoping to use kind of what I've done in wrestling and what I will continue to do, and be able to kind of branch out into that vessel. I know it was kind of long-winded about the AEW question, but
No. You took that and like really ran with it. You are talking like somebody, I feel like a Raven, or someone who you'd attribute to really knowing their character, or at least, like, in your sense, learning to know it and wanting to know it further. I think that's so awesome. I really can't wait to see what you develop.
Yeah, man, I'm excited, man. The world's getting back open. It's gonna be I think a good time. That, like I said, that kind of interaction, that human connection, is something that everyone's lacked over the last year and a half, 2 years, and that everybody's craving for, myself included. It's a big reason why I love Twitch, and so yeah, just to potentially have the opportunity to be a part of that, and hopefully give some people some positive energy, and just some enjoyment, and it's not something that I take for granted, that's for sure.
No, and you definitely shouldn't. And yeah, you're right, human connection. I'd love to do an in-person part 2 once you get this character developed, and you take the industry by storm. I can't wait. But that's it. That's all I have question-wise. This has been really enjoyable. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, man. Yeah, it was fun. I had a great time. Appreciate it.
I'm going to tell you right now, you know what I'm about to say, and you know that you have to do it. Head over to wrestlingpins.bigcartel.com right now. You're going to not regret it. You're going to pick up some pins. Whatever pins they got over there right now, they're the best in the business. Best merchandise out there. Go pick up some pins. Use the code RRR150FF. Get 15% off your order, and I'll see you soon.
Message Daddy, Boogie Woogie Man feel good. I tell my people, my brothers and sisters, don't you dare miss online, rewind, recap, relive. Oh,